A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. Apparently they have not gotten that message out there in California, that part about, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, because, boy, they sure keep infringing on the right of the people to keep and bear arms. Friday, Governor Gavin Newsom signing more than a dozen gun control bills into law in California. Now, I reached out almost immediately to folks here in California to get some reaction, and I'm very pleased to have with us on the program this morning, or today, Roy Griffith, who is a lobbyist for the California Rifle and Pistol Association, spends a lot of time doing a very difficult job there in Sacramento, where there is an anti-gun legislative supermajority. And now we know perhaps the most anti-gun governor in the state's history. Even Jerry Brown, who was no friend to gun owners, vetoed a gun control bill or two on occasion. That, however, not the case with Governor Gavin Newsom, who apparently is the Will Rogers of gun control. Never met a anti-gun bill he didn't like. So we had the opportunity to sit down and spend a few minutes with Roy Griffith talking about the bills that are now law, as well as what might be coming down the road from lawmakers and what the legal response will likely be from gun owners in the state of California. Take a look and a listen. Hey, Roy, thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
So it was
important things to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. More than a dozen gun control bills signed by Governor Gavin Newsom on Friday. We could probably talk all day long just about the bills that were signed, but in your opinion, Roy, what are the ones that the gun owners in California really need to be concerned about at the moment?
Well, I'm very concerned about primarily some of the bills that even Jerry Brown vetoed 3 times. And so Gavin, I guess, is trying to make a statement. He's not Jerry Brown, but he's also made the statement that he is not anywhere near the middle of the road or wants to take anywhere near a common sense approach to gun control. First off, Bill, a big concern. Just for your listeners, I'm prior law enforcement, 32 years service to the state of California law enforcement. The last thing I want, or CRPA wants, is people who shouldn't have guns to have guns. Armed prohibited felons and crazy people. We all agree that those people should not have firearms. That said, the governor took a bill that was already working, already in place, not even had time to prove itself. I'm talking about AB 61, gun violence restraining orders. Everybody across this country is screaming about red flag laws and crazy people doing stupid things with guns. And we've already got a law in place in California that says if Roy's immediate family or the police say Roy's crazy and should have his guns taken away, then there's a mechanism by which to go to a judge and do that. That's been in place. That's working. But what they did this year, what Mr. Ting did, was to extend that to coworkers and people you might have gone to school with. The very people, coworkers. My goodness, who could have an axe to grind with somebody, or just has a bad day at work with somebody, and they're going to go take your guns away from where you don't even have an opportunity. Without due process, you're called crazy and guilty till proven innocent. So we're very concerned about AB 61. He signed that. Governor Brown previously vetoed numerous measures of that bad piece of legislation. So we'll be watching that close for potential violations and that, but just a huge potential. Basically says law enforcement, we don't trust you here in California. We don't trust you to do your job, because what better non-partial gatekeeper than law enforcement to say that Tom's crazy and should have his guns taken away? We've got to trust our system. And what better people than immediate family members to know that? And here's the deal. Already as that stands is anybody can go to law enforcement, anybody can go to immediate family members and tell them, behavior that Roy or Tom has done and that they think merits that. And then again, they can be the gatekeepers of that information. So hugely concerning.
And not only that, Roy, do I understand correct that the length of time for these restraining orders extended from 1 year to up to 5 years by the governor?
That's the double-edged sword. That's AB 12, whereas before, you'd have to suffer this pain for a year. But even that, even after a year, it takes all kinds of court time and fees and There's cities like L.A. that take your guns and destroy them without due cause because they've got a little loophole that says when it's theirs and they're in possession for over X number of months, they can destroy it. We've had folks that have had firearms taken away on one of these bad red flag over abuses and then have their firearms destroyed in the meantime. And then it's up to them to, how do you replace a firearm that your grandfather gave you? You can't put a monetary value on it. It's not, people don't understand that firearms just aren't pieces of equipment. In the meantime, they're things that come with emotional connection and beautiful memories of hunts you went on with your dad. I mean, holy cow, I couldn't imagine, someone taking away my Sweet 16 that belonged to my grandfather and then belonged to my dad and passed on to me and someday passed on to one of my granddaughters. To have something like that taken away and destroyed, because of a bad piece of legislation like this just is greatly concerning.
Yeah.
There's that too. So there's the wham bam. You mentioned AB 12. Another one that really concerns us is the Precursor parts bill. We've already got a ghost gun bill that they signed into law a couple of years ago that says if Roy builds a gun at home, Roy's got to go get a serial number on it. So law-abiding citizens are going to do that, right? That's what law-abiding citizens do. They follow the law. Criminals do not. Well, now we got a law that says all these various parts, because God forbid, you put together a gun with these precursor parts. Every one of those parts now, not even defined. So, another big old job on the back of DOJ now to every year when somebody comes along with a new widget, to take a look at that widget and go, is this a precursor part or is this just a part?
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be another big workload, another big excuse for DOJ to keep tapping our fines and get more gross fees and get more money because they don't have enough money. Another reason for their agents, and God bless them, again, foreign law enforcement. I'm not bagging on the agents because they're just state officers doing their job. But, instead of going out and getting the over 10,000 armed prohibited felons we have roaming our streets in California, 10,000 individuals plus grows every day because they can't keep up with the list because they're telling us they're dealing with all these other responsibilities like the registration of long guns that was kicked in a few years ago. Because they're doing all these other things, and now let's throw precursor parts on that, they don't have time to go deal with the felons that roam our streets, that known bad individuals with firearms that we'd all agree shouldn't have firearms. So,
yeah. So this precursor parts bill, let me ask you, I'm sorry to interject, Roy, but this precursor parts bill basically says starting, in 2024, right? So 5 years from now, the state gave themselves a little bit of time to try to get ready for this because I don't know if they know how on earth they're going to do this, but anybody who sells a quote-unquote precursor part, which, as you noted, is not yet defined, they're going to have to become basically licensed by the state to sell those quote-unquote precursor parts, and everybody who buys one of those quote-unquote precursor parts, they're going to have to go through a background check every time they do so?
Yes, sir. And have a unique number applied to that part, so you might have a firearm with 2 or maybe 3 different serial numbers attached to that individual firearm.
Yeah.
You're right. You buy a background check to purchase it, firearms dealer's license to sell it. But then even worse, it's the ever-moving ball of what is a precursor part in any given year. As new parts come on the market, it's going to be up to DOJ to evaluate and decide, is that a precursor part or just a part? So,
based on
it's a twisted mess.
Absolutely, and based on what we've seen with the background checks for ammunition sales, I mean, we can expect that there are going to be thousands of people who are legally allowed to own a firearm, legally allowed to build a firearm, but they're going to be denied or they're going to be delayed indefinitely because of the system that California has set up. We're already seeing this right now when it comes to folks trying to buy ammunition.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's going to get worse. Stand by. And again, this is all allegedly aimed at keeping guns out of the hands of criminals. But
right. Well,
okay, so a criminal already steals Tom's gun and goes home and grinds the serial number off of it. But we got a law that says if you do that, or if you have a firearm that you build at home, you got to put a serial number. So the situation they're trying to fix with this precursor parts thing, by their own, if they're doing their job, that should already be fixed because we have the ghost gun bill that passed a couple of years ago.
Mm. Well, listen, I mean, all of these are supposedly designed to cut down on criminals, but they're, primarily aimed at legal law-abiding gun owners. You've got that bill that bans gun shows at the Del Mar Fairgrounds. And in California, again, every gun sale that takes place at a gun show, nobody's walking out with a gun because of y'all's waiting period. So I'm trying to figure out, if that's supposedly designed to cut down on criminals, how on earth is it going to do it? That's going to simply take away the ability for legal law-abiding gun owners to get together, to talk with one another, much less, start the process of buying a firearm in California.
Yeah, you're right. You're talking about AB 893, and it's a very bad piece of legislation because, again, it says that you can't do this law-abiding, this right protected by the Second Amendment. Now you can't do that on a piece of state property. And the author, Mr. Glora, said he's taking that statewide, he's taking that nationwide, he's taking that to communities because they've set the precedent. These individuals are our greatest and our finest and most educated that our citizens are sending to that big white building don't even know the law as it stands. They were testifying again this year after we've corrected them. This is, again, another bill that Brown vetoed. We've killed it 3-4 years in a row. Here and the Cow Palace, Del Mar, and there's a similar bill this year for the Cow Palace. They've testified that just exactly what you said, that people are going to walk in and buy these assault weapons and walk out the door. This is just a big madhouse where people buy guns and go home. So there's not even a clue. There's more laws. There's literally more laws applied to these gun sales at state fairs and what have you, the gun shows, than there is with a brick and mortar. So they don't even know their own laws. And here's the deal. California is suffering a huge loss in outdoor participation. We've got something called the R3 movement, recruit, retain, and reactivate. Hugely important. California has lost licensed hunters to the tune of, from the heyday in the 70s, 700,000 licensed hunters in the state of California. We're less than 300,000 licensed hunters today. These gun shows we're talking about don't just sell guns. They expose people to outdoor activities, kayaking, canoeing, hunting, fishing, a gamut of stuff that is vital to the lifeblood of California's conservationist hunters. To be able to go to these shows, see a clinic on hunting elk, hunting deer, see new firearms that they could purchase. It's very much important in the whole R3 effort to attract people and get people involved in outdoor activities. And that exposure, that big revenue, that big venue of exposure has been potentially taken away. But I think, as you know, CRP has a lawsuit against that bad piece of legislation and a decision that they already made down there at the San Diego Board of Supervisors. So we're going to keep fighting that fight and stay tuned on that one because that one's not going away.
I imagine that we're going to see some legal challenges to a lot of these laws. And unfortunately, Roy, I mean, you're the legislative affairs director there with the CRPA. Talk about what it is like right now to try to have these conversations with lawmakers in Sacramento. I mean, there's an anti-gun supermajority in the legislature. They can basically pass whatever they want, and Governor Newsom appears willing to sign whatever gets to his desk. How has it changed just in the past few years, Roy, in terms of what you do there in Sacramento?
Oh, this is our worst nightmare. I mean, we were hoping that Mr. Newsom has delusions of being president someday. So we were hoping that he would realize he's already established himself as the Trump hater. He's already established himself as the ultra-liberal, that he's got to start, we were hoping that he would finally realize by maybe taking a look at how Ms. Harris is doing in the nationwide polls, that this BS that flies in California doesn't fly on a national level. If he was at all serious about being president, we were hoping he'd show some common sense, as Jerry Brown at least did. Jerry Brown vetoed numerous of these bills in the past, years in a row, because thank God that man at least had half his old man's DNA in him. And it had a nexus to hunting, or a nexus to what we were just talking about, that R3 effort. He vetoed the bill. And we've got some powerful veto statements by him that we applied in our veto letters to Mr. Newsom. And he didn't do that. So we're very concerned, to say the least. There's another piece of legislation we should talk about that ties into all this. Mm-hmm. And that's Camellia Dove's ban of bobcats, AB 1254. This is unprecedented. First time in even our crazy state's history that white building took away the legal and lawful hunting of a critter. Bobcat hunting is now banned in California. So however you feel about bobcat hunting, the decision should be left in the hands of scientists, professionals, people who are empowered and even appointed by the governor of the state of California to make those decisions. I'm talking about the California Fish and Game Commission, and it should be entrusted in the hands of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. These are the professionals that all of us want making these decisions about our wildlife. Now, the people in the building decided hunting little furry things is just not makes their tummy feel good, and that right should be taken away from all of us. Even though it was furs and trapping that led to manifest destiny, that led to the discovery of California. They came here for the furs, you know. It's what people clothe themselves with. It's in the very heritage of many individuals. The same individuals that took away bobcat hunting, that bill started out this year with bear hunting included in it. They wanted to take away bobcat and bear, and they realized that that was too big of a bite of the apple. But they made it very clear that they're coming back for bears last year. So just to kind of paint you a picture of what we're facing, they got what they wanted this year. Now, you said it yourself, supermajority. They tested the water. Katie barred the door with God knows what we're going to face next year, because they can damn near do whatever the hell they want. And I say that painfully because we've got some just incredible individuals, some incredible representatives in that building that painstakingly get up and speak against these bills from their heart and their soul. You want to watch anything empowering, just hop on YouTube and watch anything that Mr. James Gallagher, Assemblymember Gallagher, says from up in the northern part of our state. He is an inspiration, and he gives us all courage. Many of them, Adam Gray, because I just want to make sure that your listeners know that as bad as it is, we still have people that believe what we believe in that building and fight for what we believe. But, you know, you can only do so much. We used to be able to turn a couple votes here and turn a couple votes there and get some of these things killed even on the floor. But the number of members we'd have to turn, the number of dens we'd have to get to cross company line is just, I'm never going to give up. We're not going to give up. And the long game is, as you know, we've beaten them in the courts. You know, we beat them on the large capacity magazine they did to us a couple of years. We're going to win that lawsuit ultimately. We're going to win the ammunition lawsuit that we filed on legislation they passed last year. You know, again, one of Gavin Newsom's pieces of crap bills that he did when he was just lieutenant governor. You know, that Proposition 63.
Yep.
So, you know, we're gonna win this stuff in the long run, and but they're going to keep chinking away at us. They're trying to make CCWs. One thing we need to talk about is AB 1297, McCarty. You know, beat that. We fixed that in courts years ago. That this nonsense that counties like Marin County were making it so financially impossible for the average John or Jill to get a CCW. Well, McCarty just successfully took that cap off of that, and that was something Jerry Brown had a common sense to veto, and we killed previously. And now, pretty much leaves a blank check to counties to decide to charge whatever the hell they want. So,
yeah, and you know that's going to be abused here before long. But you know, Roy, you mentioned the good lawmakers that are still there in Sacramento, and you also said that y'all aren't giving up the fight. I just want to thank you. And all of the CRPA members, all of the gun owners who are active and engaged there in California. I know that you're fighting an uphill fight right now, but I can tell you that you've got millions of gun owners all around the country who are watching what's happening in California. We don't want it to happen where we live. I live in Virginia. We've got elections coming up in less than a month. And I can tell you, if anti-gunners get their way, they're not going to take a nibble or two out of Virginia's gun laws. They're going to try to replace Virginia's gun laws and make us look a whole heck of a lot more like California than we do right now. So you guys are fighting that good fight. And honestly, I hope that gun owners around the country not only support you all in word, but support you all in deed as well, because I know that you can use the help. Well, please, thank you. And make sure your listeners know that whatever sticks to the wall here, they're taking elsewhere. They're taking the blueprints of what's gone here. They've already taken it to Nevada, tried to apply it in Oregon. So this attitude of, it's just California, let them slip off into the ocean. We can't, none of us can have that attitude. I've got friends leaving the state. They've had it. I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay here and fight to my last breath. I love the state. We've got the tallest living thing in the world. We've got the biggest living thing in the world. We've got Pacific Ocean that I have to get my hiney in every once in a while. And make sure your listeners know that the battle is here and we need their help. We've got the best attorneys in the state. I'm not going to mention all their names, but these guys fight behind the scenes and do a great job. But Chuck Michelle and his staff are the nation's finest attorneys on this front. And we need your help. We need your support. And I'm not just talking financially, but this attitude we all had, I grew up with it, just leave me alone. I want to hunt. I want to fish. I was, like I said, caught for all those years. We're by our nature. Just leave us alone. Let us do our thing. That don't fly anymore, and we all got to get involved. We all got to fight because people got to talk to the person stuck behind them in line at the grocery store, whoever cuts their hair. We all need to spread the word, whether they're gun owner. We don't care. We don't want to make everybody a gun owner. We want to make them an educated voter.
And that's the difference that we need. The same with hunting. We're not out to turn everybody into hunters, but we need their vote. We need them to think of common sense when they go to the ballot and something says we're going to take away bear hunting. My God, just watch any news channel. Any night in California, you'll see a bear in someone's backyard where they've never been. They're just coming down in the low foothills and cities where they've never been before because of 5 years, 6 years ago now they took away hound hunting of bears in California. So
yeah.
There's just no effective means to harvest and keep these animals in check. These beautiful animals, which I love, I spent many years protecting them, but these animals have to be kept in check with their habitat, and that's what, hunting is a tool of wildlife managers, and that's been taken away from us. So it's not just firearms. They're going after all of our rights here in California. So I really appreciate your time and opportunity to talk with you, and we're always a phone call away. If you have any questions or need anything from us.
We'll be talking a lot more in the future, Roy. Listen, thank you so much for your time, for everything that you do there for gun owners in California, all across the nation. And I appreciate you joining us here on Bearing Arms Cam & Company. Now, I mentioned when we were talking with Roy that we've got elections in Virginia coming up in a few weeks. We also have elections in New Jersey coming up in a few weeks as well. Meanwhile, lawmakers going to get back to it in state houses around the country over the next coming weeks, and maybe at most, you got a few months before the legislatures are back in session. There's a new poll out of Illinois, an NPR University of Illinois poll, showing that according to the pollsters anyway, residents in Illinois are clamoring for more gun control laws. Yeah, take a look at some of these numbers here. Do you support or oppose banning ammunition magazines with a capacity of more than 10 rounds? 75%. At least somewhat support it, 54% strongly support it. A ban on quote-unquote assault weapons, 55% strongly support such a measure in Illinois. Do you support or oppose requiring mental health background checks on all firearm purchases? 73% say yes to that. Also, 69% do you support or oppose requiring applicants for the firearms owner ID card to submit fingerprints as part of their application? 69% strongly support. Another almost 20% say they somewhat support that measure. Now, I'd be curious to find out, just as a baseline, I would love to see this poll ask the question, do gun owners in Illinois have to acquire an ID card before they can legally own a firearm? Because I'm guessing that a lot of the folks who answered this poll probably don't know much about the existing gun laws in Illinois. As a matter of fact, that is Richard Pearson's assertion. He is the president of the Illinois State Rifle Association. He says, quote, we already scan a person's mental health history. Well, here's the quote. He said, quote, we also have to have a background check no matter who we sell a gun to, whether it's at a gun show, not a gun show, or a neighbor, or an uncle, or through a dealer. He says, this tells me as a gun owner that we're not getting our message out about what's really going on, to be honest with you, and we have a great deal of trouble with that. I suspect that Richard is largely correct. You don't hear the gun owners' side of things in the media in Illinois, certainly the same way that you hear the gun control advocate side of things. But even beyond the media, again, I think culturally, when you have, and I don't want to grossly exaggerate here, but when you have non-gun owners talking to other non-gun owners about gun control laws, it is not surprising if a lot of bad information or misinformation gets out, particularly when gun control advocates want people to believe that violent crime is at the highest level in our nation's history, even though it's near 50-year lows. They want people to believe that, no, you don't have to go through a background check when you buy a gun at a gun store. There are a lot of misrepresentations of existing law at both the federal and state level that gun control advocates take advantage of. Ignorance helps their cause. It doesn't hurt their cause. And I think Richard Pearson is correct when he says that gun owners, not just in Illinois, but really around the country, we do need to be doing a better job of reaching out, engaging with people who are not gun owners, not to try to convince them to become a gun owner or to become a Second Amendment activist, but to simply understand what the current laws are and to get them to think a little bit about what enforcing any additional laws might look like. All right, let's get to today's armed citizen story, our good deed of the day. And again, a matter of time, or the recidivist report, whatever you want to call it. I think both of those names fit. This from Kentucky, where a Kentucky man's now been charged with the murder of his father-in-law, as well as kidnapping his wife and mother-in-law, and he blames it all on his wife. Yes, she made me do it. Terry Whitehouse is this individual's name. Interesting that supposedly his wife made him do this, given that she had taken out an order of protection against her husband, which had actually expired the day before. He is accused of, excuse me, I'm sorry. Let me backtrack a little bit. It's not that the order of protection expired the day before he is accused of this crime. No. According to WHAS Channel 11, Whitehouse actually was released from jail the day before this murder and double kidnapping took place. Quote, just released from jail the night before the alleged abduction for violating a protection order filed by his wife. Now, his wife, Melinda Whitehouse, has been questioned by police. She was taken to a hospital for further evaluation, but according to the department, she was taken against her will. She's not facing any charges at this particular time. Terry Whitehouse, however, is facing a number of charges. Police say that he abducted his wife, Melinda, as well as his mother-in-law, Debbie Bowman, from Eminence, Kentucky, back on October the 10th. Debbie Bowman says that Whitehouse also killed her husband, Marvin, with a hammer before taking the two women at knife point. She said, quote, he kept telling me the whole time, Terry did, my husband was just tied up in the garage, and knowing the whole time that he had already killed him when he came in the house and got me and my daughter. Debbie Bowman managed to escape. She actually flagged down a school bus for help. Terry Whitehouse ended up taking off and got away with his wife. They looked for a day and a half. October the 12th, police found a tip from Shelby County. Apparently, a person spotted the van the police were looking for, called the authorities. They tried to pull the van over. According to Shelby County Sheriff Mark Moore, Whitehouse and his wife got out of the van while Melinda stayed by the vehicle. Whitehouse ran into the woods. Whitehouse was arrested, quote, without incident. And again, maybe should have been behind bars. Maybe, I don't know how much time he spent for violating this protective order, but maybe should have spent a little bit more time behind bars. And sadly, this case also reaffirms something that may be an uncomfortable truth for some folks, and that is that these protective orders are not a suit of armor. They are a piece of paper. And if somebody chooses to violate a protective order, the only way that the law is going to deal with that is after the fact. Again, it's an uncomfortable truth, but it is a truth. And so if you, this is my opinion here, if you are concerned about your safety to the point that you've taken out an order of protection, please understand that that order, if somebody chooses to disobey it, is not going to protect you. It does not come with a automatic police presence. It does not come with round-the-clock security. It is a piece of paper that informs an individual. If you violate the terms of this order, then you will go back to jail. But that is it. All right, let's get to our armed citizen story of the day from, of all places, you ready for this? New York City. I know, the Bronx, where a store employee shot an attempted robber in Fordham. And yes, this was a legal gun owner in New York City, one of the rare legal gun owners. Police say a 26-year-old man walked into the store Sunday morning just before 1 a.m. and tried to rob the joint. A employee of the store, 34 years of age, and a legal gun owner, drew his firearm, fired at the attempted robber multiple times, hitting him. According to Channel 12 in New York, officials say that the firearm that the employee used was his licensed gun. Suspect taken to St. Barnabas Hospital in critical but stable condition. Police say the employee, as of Sunday morning anyway, is not facing any charges, given that this is New York City. However, that could change. So we will try to keep our eyes on this particular story. And our good deed of the day from Jacksonville, Florida, St. Augustine area, actually, where a good Samaritan ended up saving a father and son caught in a riptide. This is a pretty scary story. Andrew Martin and his son Ethan were in Florida from Illinois on vacation. They were staying at St. Augustine Beach. Andrew Martin is a corrections officer there in the state of Illinois, and he and his son were body surfing. This was last Tuesday afternoon. Got knocked over by some waves, swept out by a rip current. The pair said they can both swim, but the conditions were just too rough for them. Ethan Martin said that he was thinking, quote, "This is how it ends." He said, "I knew it was a bad situation. We started calling for help." Thankfully, several folks did see what was going on from the shore, so 911 was called. A woman reporting that two people in the water yelling for help. Joe Allen, who is a SWAT officer from Prince William County in Northern Virginia, just south of the D.C. area, he was on vacation with his wife, who's also a law enforcement officer. Joe Allen said, "I could tell whoever was yelling, they were yelling for help." So he grabbed a boogie board and took off into the water. When he reached the father and son, he let them hold on to the board, catch the breath, and then they started paddling back to shore. St. John's Sheriff's Deputy, St. Johns County firefighters, two St. Augustine Beach police officers also nearby, speeding to the scene, stripping off their uniforms, jumping in. As Officer Allen's wife relayed information to them from the shore, Lieutenant Dan Power, who is a supervisor with the St. Johns County Fire Rescue Marine Unit, said it was a little crazy there in the beginning, trying to get a head count and figuring out who's out there and who's not and that kind of stuff. He said, but once we started seeing the OK signs coming up, we started realizing that we've got this under our control. Commander Lee Ashlock with the St. Augustine Beach Police Department said that Officer Allen, that off-duty SWAT officer from Northern Virginia, is, quote, the real hero in this thing. He said he saved their lives. He provided them a means so we could get to them and help them float a little longer. A day later, last Wednesday, the Martin family got to meet Officer Allen as well as the first responders. The elder Martin says they definitely saved our lives. We were about done. I don't think that we could have held on for much longer. So there you go. In the right place, at the right time, on vacation, on the right beach, I suppose. And willing and able to do the right thing. Joe Allen, SWAT officer there from Prince William County, as well as all of the first responders there in St. Augustine. We thank you all for being some of the many good guys out there. We thank you for your good deed. That is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. I want to thank you for being a part of the program as well. We love having you here. The email address, and by the way, I apologize. I've been a little remiss in responding to emails. I will catch up today. But the email address is cam.edwards@bearingarms.com. Have heard from a lot of you who say that you are planning on attending the Second Amendment rally coming up November the 2nd. You can get more information about that at secondamendmentrally.com. You can also subscribe to Bearing Arms Cam and Company as a podcast at Spotify, Stitcher. I'm missing a big one. Apple Podcast, that's one. And townhall.com podcast. You can also subscribe to Town Hall Media at YouTube and get the latest program each and every day. Thank you again for being a part of the program. We will see you here soon with another edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company.